I'd like to call to order the special meeting today, October 19, 2017, at 4 p.m. Notice is hereby given that at the call of trustees Dwayne Mohammed, Valerie Stubbs, and Robert Pearson, the Village of Dalton Board of Trustees will hold this special meeting today here at the Village Hall. If everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you remain standing, we ask that Minister White lead us in prayer today.
Bow our head. Father God, we just honor you on today, Lord God, and we're thanking you yet for another day to come and to be on one accord, Lord God, and unity, Lord God. We bless this meeting, Lord God, and we ask that it's in order for the purpose in which it was called, Lord God. Let everyone be on one accord, Lord God, for the benefit of the community in which they serve, oh God. Father, we thank you for everyone that has come out to attend this meeting, even the ones that's en route coming, Lord God. Let it be a productive meeting to benefit this community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Old business, there's no old business on the agenda, and we'll call the roll.
Trustee Mohammed?
Here.
Trustee Stubbs?
Here.
Trustee House?
Here.
Trustee Denton?
Present.
Trustee Pearson?
Present.
Trustee Henyard?
I was notified that Trustee Henyard would not be present today. We have 5 members of the board, and there is a quorum. Okay.
Mayor, can I be recognized?
Go ahead, Trustee.
If you would indulge me, if I can make a motion that we go through all of the new business items A, B, C, D, E, and F, and before the board makes a vote, that we move citizens' address after the presentation so that we can get the input from our residents, and then after input from the residents, that the board take the vote after citizens' address.
Second.
Okay. You know, there's no need for a motion on that. Okay. We can just move it forward. Okay. We have Mr. Vincent Kankar here, who's going to make a presentation. Are you going to do it in coinciding with each ordinance number that we're presenting today?
No, I think Trustee Mohammed's going to give a brief.
Yes, if I could be recognized.
And then I'm just going to go through the whole picture, but not the specifics of any ordinance, because it's all wrapped in together.
Okay.
You can't do one without doing them all.
Right. Okay. First ordinance is ordinance number, item A, ordinance number 17-036, an ordinance levying taxes for general and corporate purposes for the 2017 tax year beginning May 1st, 2017 and ending April 30th, 2018 for the Village of Dalton, Cook County.
Can I be recognized, Mayor?
Go ahead.
I'd like to introduce to the residents in this board Attorney Vincent Kankar, and I'd like to give an overview of his resume. I won't give all of it because it ranges 5 pages, but Attorney Kankar, if you could please take the podium. While you're doing that, I'll let the residents in this board know who Vincent Kankar is and what qualifies him to give this presentation and to remind us of the financial state that this village is in and what we can do to resolve it. Vincent Kankar is part of the Kankar Law Offices, and presently the following units of local government that the Kankar Limited as their regular appointment attorneys are City of Burbank, Hickory Hills, Hometown, Wauteska, Alsip, Bridgeview, Evergreen Park, Justice, Manteno, McCook, Alsip Park District, Burbank Park District, Calumet Memorial Park District, Stickney Park District, Hazelcrest Park District, Hodgkins Park District, McCook Park District, Pleasantdale Park District, Tri-State Park District, Central Stickney Fire Protection District, Village of Summit Board of Fire and Police Commissioners, South Lyons Township Sanitary District, Stickney Township, Stickney Public Health District, West Suburban Water Commission, River Valley Metro Mass Transit District. Many other units of government also use the firm in specialized areas where their general counsel does not have required expertise. The firm is listed in the bond buyer as a nationally recognized tax-exempt bond counsel whose opinions can be relied upon throughout the country in the sale of tax-exempt bonds, securities, tax-exempt leases, and installment purchase contracts. Over the past 20 years, his firm has written the bond opinion on more than, let me make sure this is right, Mr. Kankar, $1.2 billion of bonds involving at least 250 transactions. A specialty is the issuance of tax-exempt bonds within tax increment financing districts. The firm represents many municipalities with respect to tax increment districts, including their establishment, maximizing incremental property taxes, redevelopment agreements, and annual TIF district compliance reports. Areas of representation for local government clients include but are not limited to the following: advise and attend meetings of city councils, village boards of trustees, boards of park commissioners, library boards of trustees, fire protection district boards of trustees, and other boards and committees. Advise and attend meetings of plan commission, zoning boards of appeals. There's a lot to go on here. What I'll do is I'll submit this into the record to our clerk, and hopefully we can put this on the our website. But let me just give you an attorney profile of Mr. Kankar. He graduated from DePaul University College of Law in 1974 and was submitted to practice law that same year. Since that time, he has concentrated his practice in representing units of local government. Mr. Kankar is a member of the Bar of the State of Illinois, the Trial Bar of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, the Bar of the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit and the United States Supreme Court. Mr. Kankar is the village attorney for the village of Bridgeview and the village of Evergreen Park, and the city attorney for the city of Burbank and the city of Hickory Hills, regularly attending their monthly meetings. Additionally, Mr. Kankar regularly attends the board meetings of numerous other units of local government. Mr. Kankar is a registered bond counsel. And with that, I give you Mr. Vincent Kankar.
Thank you, Trustee Mohammed. My remarks to the audience and to the board this afternoon are going to be general remarks and backed up by some facts and some figures which have been passed out, which will appear on the teleprompter up on top. I've been working in the past 3 years with Yvonne in the finance department trying to work through paying the bills of the village. Unfortunately, the finances of the village are in bad shape. Okay, we're here today, and I'm going to tell you, we're at the bottom. If the board does not take action today, it's going to be too late to do anything in the future. It's just as plain and simple as that. We've been able to piece things together for 2 or 3 years, sell a one-year bond every year to get some money in the village to pay some items off. But right now, I mean, if you get too far behind on the scavenger bills, the garbage is going to pile up in the streets. If you get too far behind in your paramedic bills, there's not going to be any paramedics to answer the calls for emergencies. You won't be able to pay your employees. It's the end of the line, and I don't know how to say it other than that. And even worse, there's been legislation which was passed about 3 years ago, 4 years ago at the state level, which provides that if you do not provide proper funding for your pension funds, the pension funds can now file in Springfield to take your revenues, your sales tax and your income tax, before it even gets to the village. So they can intercept it ahead of you, and it goes right to the pension fund. I mean, you're at that point where that's a strong possibility to happen next year. And you just can't afford to be at that point. You need every penny you can get, and you don't have the ability to do that. Now, some of your financial problems are not your fault. Some of the financial problems you'll never be able to solve. One of the major financial problems you have is the tax collections in the village. Right now, your total tax levy, including bonds, is about $11 million, $12 million a year, somewhere in that range. Because of poor tax collections, on the $12 million total taxes, the village does not receive $2.5 million of that. They receive about $9.5 million out of $12 million. And they receive that by December 1st of the year. Well, unfortunately, on December 1st, they have to make payments on their bonds, and the money's not there, and it will never be there. I mean, at best, your real estate tax collections are about 86% of every dollar you levy. So you're never going to catch up doing what you've been doing. And it's not your fault. The tax collections are something you have no control over, and the only way to resolve that is to ask the county clerk to put a larger tax loss factor in on the tax levy. And that's what the ordinances I presented to you before today do. They have a minor increase in the tax levy, and then they ask the county clerk to set the tax levy loss at where it should be. And the other part of the problem, though, is the past boards. Some of the people are on those here are on those boards. Some of them weren't. Your tax levy, and the first chart up there, is the comparison of tax levies from 2010 to 2016 in south suburban areas. Well, you can see in the village of Dalton, in that 6-year period, the taxes have gone up 7.09%. That's 6 years. That's about 1% a year. I mean, nobody can live on 1% a year, especially when you don't collect the full 1%. And if you compare it to the other municipalities in the area, Lansing went up 51%. And the other clients, Riverdale's 38%. And I threw Evergreen Park in here because although it's not adjacent to this, it's an area, it's a middle-class area, but it's undergoing tremendous commercial businesses. Okay, tremendous commercial businesses, and it's still yet there with a large sales tax base. The taxes went up 19.42% in the last 6 years. So you just can't keep taxing the way you're doing. If you look at the second chart, which is the comparison of the 2014, 15, and 16 tax levies, you will see over the last 3 years, the tax levy in the village of Dalton has gone down 2.9%. And during that time, the tax levy, for example, in Lansing has gone up 15.63%. Tax levy in Belize, 10.42%. Again, the village of Dalton is behind the other communities. And you know, it's fine to have low taxes, but you can't pay the bills with taxes as low as they are when everybody else is going up and you're doing nothing. If you look at the third chart I prepared, which says 14% loss factor on top, what I've done is taken your tax bills and made them a 14% loss factor instead of a 5% that the county applies. Bottom line, if you do that and your tax bill, we'll say it's $3,000 now, it goes up by $6.38 a month for an increase of 2.55%. No matter what your tax bill is, it would go up 2.55%. And this plan is not enough, okay? The last page I presented is a 14% loss factor and 24% for the bonds because you're way behind in your bond payments. If you implement every one of those ordinances in there as I've suggested and prepared, the tax bill would go up 3.83%. That's not a large amount. 3.83%. It'll give you a fighting chance. That's all I can tell you. It'll give you a fighting chance. And after that, every year, you're going to have to raise your real estate tax bill by about 4.9%, which is going to equivalent to about a 1% increase in the whole tax bill, just to keep going and to survive. I mean, right now, you owe a substantial amount on a tax anticipation warrant. You have big bond payments coming up December 1. You have regular bills, and Yvonne just told me the astronomical amount of those bills.
Quick question, Attorney. Quick question. Explain to the residents what you mean by loss factor with the county. You use the term loss factor.
Loss factor is this. Tax bills are never collected 100%. There's various reasons. Some people don't pay their taxes. Some people switch to property being exempt in the middle of a term, that loses taxes. In the old days, when a house was in foreclosure, the mortgage company would pay the tax bill because they know they're going to get that house back. They no longer do that. When a house is in foreclosure now, many times the mortgage companies do not pay the tax bills. And they don't pay them because the tax bills get too high and the property is not worth what the tax bill is. So we call that loss in collection. That means that if you, for $1 tax that you're supposed to get back, you don't get $1. You get at most here 85 cents. So right away you can see that even if your tax levy was $12 million, 15% of that is going to be $1,800,000 a year that you're not getting, that you're counting on. Okay, and basically the problem is that you're spending. Okay, and that has to be, you have to put a separate tax collection factor in there, ask the county to do it, and they will do it. And so what we've done in the ordinances today is there's nothing extravagant in here. We've basically asked the trustees to pass the ordinances, the result of which would be about a 3.83% increase in the tax bill. And then you're going to have to go through the process of tax levy every year, and my recommendation is to do the 4.9% increase, which is really not a 4.9% overall. It's just on your tax levy part. And all this is very difficult to understand, and we still need more help. This is not going to resolve it. We still need to borrow money, okay, to pay off the TAWs, and we can borrow money, pay off the TAWs, and get that paid off in a year. Okay, we can bring up some of the bills by having some more money come in, but even if you raise the taxes, this new money is not going to come in until next August. But we will be able to tell the creditors and the suppliers of the village and the rating companies and the banks that the village is doing something now. The village realizes they can't sit back and do nothing. And that's where it's been in the past. Everybody was afraid to tackle the problem because the problem is huge. And it is a very huge problem. And it's very difficult to understand. But you as the elected leaders of this community have to make that decision. I mean, that's what the people elected you for. I mean, you have to determine the level of services that you're going to provide to the people of the village of Dalton. You have to make those choices. If the village continues like it's doing now, eventually there are no choices. The state will take you over, and then from there, who knows what's going to happen. So now is your time to make choices. Now, if there are any questions from the board members, I'd be happy to answer them. And then, I think you're going to say, trustee said you're going to have a public session, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from the public too.
Yes, I have a question. Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
I just would like for you to let the residents know what percentage did the village receive from the taxes this year, if you can recall. What percentage
Of what?
of the taxes from the property taxes?
Oh, go to the village?
Yes.
Approximately, I believe it was 28, I think it was 28%. It varies year by year, but about 28% of the tax bill. And it really depends on what school district you're in. One of the school districts, I noticed, just put a board member on the payroll for $110,000. I don't know what school district that is, but it depends what school district you're in and what they tax and how much bonds they put out. But I think it's 23 to 28%.
Could you explain further what it means exactly when you say the state will take over?
Well, the state took over, for example, the city of East St. Louis because there's no money. They just put a financial board in place, and that board then makes the decisions that you make. That's what that means. It's like bankruptcy court in a way. You no longer have any control over what you do or what the residents want or do want. The state makes those decisions for you.
Okay. Okay, any further? Go ahead.
Mr. Kankar, if you would clarify when you say the percentage of the increase in the tax bill,
Right.
that's for the Village of Dalton portion of the tax bill?
No, that's for the whole tax
For the
bill.
whole tax bill.
Right.
So if I pay $3,000 in taxes and I'm going up to, I take that $3,000
And
and
it'll go-
3.83% of it would be what the increase is.
That's correct.
Okay.
Exactly right. The whole tax bill, not the village part.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay, you want to explain the next one? We'll go on to item B.
Well, they're all the
They're
same.
all
Okay,
combined.
all right.
I mean, they're all the same. Either you pass one ordinance or you pass none of them, to
Right.
be honest with you.
Okay.
They're all the same. They all deal with the tax loss factor. They can't be explained separately because you can't put one stitch in a wound that requires 3 stitches. It's not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
So, but if
Okay.
there are some questions from the audience, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, is this a public comment? All right, Mr. Lee.
No,
Oh,
we
we
need
gotta
you
get
to
you
come
a
up to
mic.
the mic, please, just like you normally do. And Mr. Kankar, if you can,
Yeah, you can have a seat right here. Sir. You can speak right to that.
Greetings to the board, greetings to my fellow citizens and any other officials that may be in the building. What percentage of the homes in Dalton are currently under foreclosure or are going through some kind of bank procedure?
I do not know those numbers. I don't have availability. Those
Does
numbers
anybody in this room have any idea what that is?
yes, we have approximately 1,100 homes that are currently in pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, or bank sale. They're coming
And
under
that's-
those 3 categories,
That's out
approximately
of-
1,100 in Dalton,
Out of how many homes? Because I don't know how many
out
total
of
homes.
about 8,000 to 9,000 homes,
So we're talking about
actual
10%.
households.
So we're talking 10%, 12%. Is there a way to get revenue from the banks to, kind of pad this a little bit, to take away some of our tax liabilities? I'm not trying to squeeze anyone, but it seems like that's one item that we may be able to look at and get some revenue from, because doing these foreclosure procedures, the houses are sitting there anyway. If you can find a way to maybe levy them a little more heavy than we're leveraging ourselves, then maybe that might help some.
There technically a foreclosure action in court, which is what you're talking about. The transfer on a deed from a foreclosure is exempt from real estate transfer taxes by state
Well,
law.
there it is. Why?
So, it's a state law.
Okay. Well, how
So
do
you
we-
can't do that.
Okay, but how do we go about getting that changed? Is there a way, a procedure, or can the villages that are under financial stress
No.
get together and possibly petition the state or the legislature or the governor or the governor's
Well-
candidates to change that law?
First of all, you'd be talking about a drop in the bucket. It would not solve your problems. Even if you sold 300 homes a year at $1,000 transfer, that's $300,000, and that is not. That doesn't resolve anything, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's just a minor amount. And secondly, when you try and levy a transfer tax, you have to remember that you're going to be fighting against every bank and every financial institution that there is. And unfortunately, the pull of those banks and financial institutions is a lot more pull than the Village of Dalton has.
Okay, well, how about this then? Illinois' status as a donor state. We're sending $120 billion a year to the federal government right now, or something like that. And compare that to states like Indiana, which is sending $42 billion, or under $50 billion to the federal government. I know this is a long haul, this is a long-term solution, but if we can equalize the donor state status of Illinois, we are number 47 out of 50 states that benefit from the money that we send to Washington. Indiana is somewhere like number 10. That is a huge difference, because I keep mentioning Indiana because a lot of us are taking our revenue over to Indiana, which is making the problem worse. I mean, yeah, we get our little sugar taxes and all that. Yeah, that's fine and dandy, but in the long term, we're cutting our own throat.
Well, I would tell you that that's not going to be a solution. It's not going to happen. First of all, with Trump, okay, it's not going to happen.
Trump won't be there forever.
The count on the federal government changing is It's not going to happen,
Somebody
and you
changed
don't
the
have time
commitment.
besides
Somebody-
that.
Okay, I said long-term, that's the key.
Right.
Is long
You
term.
don't, you do not have time.
Okay, so how about this then? Right now, one of the gubernatorial candidates is currently pushing for the flat tax to be increased to a progressive tax like our neighbors. That's another form of revenue that could possibly help. I know this is longer term than what we need, but what I'm trying to do is look down the road to avoid this, because I plan on leaving here for a little while. Okay, so there are things that I think that we can start doing now. You have to take that first step. Just saying no, no, no to all long term is what got us into this in the first place. Okay, so you know, I'm basically talking to the board and people that have connections and whatnot to to people in the government. We need to start on some of these solutions now.
Wow.
Right now.
Well, the Lord helps those who help themselves. Okay, and you cannot count on a bailout from the state of Illinois or from the federal government. It's just not going to happen. State of Illinois is behind $20 billion in bills. Believe me, if they raise the income tax, it's not going to you. Okay, it's going to go to the state, and it's going to pay the bills at the state level. It's just not going to happen.
Well, in that case, I'm just glad you weren't around before we switched from horse and buggies to cars. I mean, if you're going to have that attitude.
No, I don't have the attitude, but you have to be realistic. You have to be.
One person's realism is another person's reality. Right. Okay? And so saying no, 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 okay, I understand what you're saying, this is an immediate problem. But I don't have any immediate solutions, just like apparently other than what you have already posted here on these, in this meeting. However, I do think that we're going to have to start looking forward and stop thinking small, because at some point we're going to have to change, because we can't nickel and dime ourselves to death forever. I mean, everybody's under stress. I mean, yeah, I understand these are not very large increases, and I appreciate that part of it. But to avoid this problem, I think that anyone that happen to write to their congressman like I do and write to their senators like I do, we can start this ball rolling before it engulfs us. Now I'm just saying this for the benefit of all of us, not just this particular situation, because this situation is it's a canary in the coal mine, basically. So I just wanted to say those things.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Lee. Anyone else? Come on up, John.
I have two questions for you. When Trustee Stubbs asked about a percentage, and you gave her a 28% failure to receive taxes?
No. She asked me what percentage of the tax bill was the village portion of the tax bill. That was like 23 to 28%.
Was that your question?
Yes, that was her question.
Okay, I didn't. Well, then I have a question.
Okay.
What percent of our taxes are not being paid?
Approximately 15% are never paid. 20% are not paid on time. So if that 20% not paid on time, eventually 5% of that gets paid. But in the long run, 15% of your taxes are not paid.
Okay. What resources would we have for making it less desirable to just not pay taxes, or what are the sources of the problem of receiving our taxes?
Well, okay. Every municipality has tax loss. Okay, a typical tax loss is between 3 to 5%. You go to areas, some of the areas we represent, let's say out by Countryside, out by Hinsdale, tax loss is probably in the range of 3 to 4 or 5%. So there's always some loss. There's nothing you can do about that.
Why not?
There's nothing you can do. If the people do not pay their bills, they do not pay their bills.
Vince, let me add something. What Mr. Cankart said earlier, the problem that the village feels now is in large part a function of the real estate crash. In the pre-crash days, if somebody stopped making their house payment, and remember your house payment includes your taxes, right? It always is built in the monthly.
Right.
And if there would be problems, the banks would always pay the property taxes. Why? Because before the crash, the value of the house was good, right? And the bank wanted to protect its investment in going through foreclosure so a tax buyer wouldn't pick it up. So when times were good, the banks would pay the property taxes, we'd get our money, and the foreclosure would work its course, and it wouldn't really make any difference to us. Now there's been a real estate crash. We've talked about this before, that houses in Dalton that were worth $150,000 were selling for $35,000 or $40,000. Thank God we're slowly on the uptick. So the problem that we're getting is that the banks are no longer protecting their investment in the house. They're letting the property go to the scavengers for property taxes because they know if they've lent $200,000 on the property and the house is only going to be worth $45,000, they're never going to see their money anyway. So why the heck should they pay the property taxes? That's what Vince is talking about in terms of that 15% or 20% of the taxes aren't coming to us because the homeowner's not paying them, and the bank, who used to be the safety net for us, they're not paying the taxes. Is that correct, Vince?
Yeah, that's correct, and then that brings in another problem. The house sells for $35,000 or $40,000, and unfortunately, that brings in people that own a home that can't afford to own a home, and then it brings in more undesirable characters. It's just a rolling problem, and it has to be stopped. Now, and the people that pay $35,000 for a house are going to want the same services the people paid $150,000 for the house, and there's nobody there to provide it.
One of the other things is that the reason that the banks have not went forward to pay the property taxes is because a lot of the foreclosures that happen, those people have been in their homes 15 to 17 years on a 30-year mortgage. So the banks have received their interest money way up front. So you don't start paying interest probably to after the 15, 17, principal to after the 15 to 17 year. So the bank said, well, we got our money up front already, so we're not going to pay any more on this houses in foreclosure to pay those taxes. And they wind up leaving them vacant or unoccupied, go into foreclosure. Now, another thing is the fact that, Trustee Muhammad said there's 1,100 foreclosures out here. Currently, right now, we anticipate there's about 9,200 households. Now, just because that house goes into foreclosure does not mean that it's vacant. Depending on how the homeowner pursues the foreclosure, they can stay in that house 18 months, 2 years, if they continue to go and fight the foreclosure, to continue to go and make sure the process is right. When those houses become vacant is usually if those homeowners have exhausted their means by the 18th of 2 years, 18 months or 2 years, and or if they're scared out of their homes. Because once those foreclosures notice come out, a lot of people say, well, you know what? And in some cases, the banks will not take partial payments. So, for example, if you're 3 months behind and you got the 3 months behind, now they add on all the attorney fees and other legal fees that they can do, and they won't accept partial payments. They said, well, don't talk to us anymore because we've already passed it to the attorney. And when they get those notices, they're afraid to go to court. Well, if I can't pay my 3 months I'm behind, I can't afford an attorney. They don't go to court, and that foreclosure company, whether it be a bank, private lender, expedites the foreclosure process. And in some cases, they try to get you out of your home in 45 days. The sheriff sends a notice out, and the people become afraid. Well, I don't want them to come and put my stuff out on the street, so they move, and that may allow that piece of property to stay on the vacant for longer than it would normally do.
My question is, the house has value because utilities and services have been provided to that house at the expense of the village.
No, not necessarily.
Garbage has been collected. Water has been provided.
Yeah. Well, it's hard sometimes for us to determine if that house is in foreclosure and or if it's vacant. Because and this happens, Homeowner gets in a distressed situation, they're afraid of eviction, and they move out in the middle of the night. Sometimes they don't take the curtains down. It looks like it's occupied. The only people that really know that it's unoccupied for a time period are the neighbors next door, the people across the street, because they don't see people coming in and out. And in some cases, if you talk to your neighbors, sometimes you can relate to them that you're in financial distress, and they know. But a lot of times, the village doesn't know until someone breaks in, there's some vandalism, and you call and say, hey, can you get this house boarded up?
Well,
Yes. I mean, I understand what you're saying about the water, let's say the water bills. Somebody's
Yeah,
still using
adds
water.
value to
but
the house.
But that's a process after 3-4 months of non-payment, then the village goes in eventually and shuts it down, there's an amount owed. But
now,
the
is
problem
that
is,
true?
you put a lien against the property, the mortgage was recorded first, so when you go to foreclosure, the village lien for water is wiped out.
Why? I don't understand that. Again, please.
The mortgage lien is recorded first before water lien is recorded. So it has priority. So when you go to court, the mortgage lien wipes out everything after it and wipes out all the water bills that should have been paid that are not paid.
Why is that the case when
That's again, that's the way law.
village services keep up the value of the home? Why shouldn't the
That's the way-
village be in line?
That's the way state law is.
Yeah, and in some cases, Joan, when we do find out that the house is vacant and that the water bill continues to go forward, if that house winds up being sold, then that payment of the water bill is done, is paid off before they can get a transfer stamp on it. Now,
But that's only the water bill you're saying?
well,
Or all
that's
the
it.
bills? bill?
No, utility, the person's responsible for that. Eventually, the gas company will turn your gas off. Eventually, ComEd will turn your lights off. But
Okay, yeah.
that water bill should follow that home if it gets resold, and the water and the village is able to collect it.
If it gets sold to an individual?
Whether it's individual or investor, it should get paid.
But the bank, when the bank gets the house back, we don't require them.
No, you can't, because the mortgage lien is wiped out in the foreclosure.
Right.
Well-
And another thing, Joan, what happens is where the village can become not the recipient of a final water bill is that usually when people wind up in foreclosure, they do everything possible to try to save their home. And one of the things is filing bankruptcy. Once there's a bankruptcy that is filed, it goes into a trustee, depending on the type of bankruptcy, whether it's a 7, 13, or 11. 11 probably wouldn't apply because that's for reorganization, but whether it's a 7 or a 13, the village may not be able to collect that outstanding water bill because of bankruptcy protection.
Well, my question then is has it ever been tried to change the law? Because the mortgage payment has to do with interest that is an intangible, basically, while these services have been tangible services provided.
You know, you can't connect that the village services with the mortgage. You know, two separate
Well, when
items.
whoever benefits from receiving this home, what they're receiving is a home that doesn't have garbage piled up in the basement, that doesn't have rusting pipes going to the house because the water's been turned off. There's a certain amount of value to the fact that the village has provided services. And why can't we recoup? I mean, I understand it's because there's no law, but it seems to me somebody might think about suggesting that before the mortgage lender, who basically is really charging for an intangible, just the use of the money, they're getting everything. Why can't we get this little bit that has been actually provided to the previous homeowner that the new homeowner can benefit from?
The system does not work that way. You're talking about a national system, FHA mortgages, Ginnie Mae mortgages, Fannie Mae mortgages, and that system is not going to be changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a good system, but it's not going to be changed.
Well, I'm saying never say never, and I'd like to think that some kind of review could be made from whatever level it has to be, that this is not fair, that the village is suffering and the mortgage owners are not.
Yeah. You know, Joan, one way to try to pursue this is through your legislators. So, you know, and that's the only way to try to get the law changed.
Well, I would ask that the trustees consider, who have legal support, not me.
Okay.
Consider this as an option. Put it forward. That we deserve to have compensation for what has been provided that has enabled that house to be worth a certain amount of money.
Well, one thing that comes into play, and not to prolong this, is comparables. If you get a house, you're in your house, you paid $150,000 for it, you're underwater in your mortgage, and then 2 houses down that goes into foreclosure, and it depends on the value of that house when that house is sold, if it's ever sold. So it's all incidental to how the houses are sold and how the comparables come in, you know. So
I'm just asking that it be reviewed, the situation be reviewed, reconsidered, if this is really a fair and reasonable.
Well, I can provide the statutory references to the village,
No, I don't
and we
want
can look it
those.
over.
Wouldn't know what to do with it. I have another question for you. What is your financial gain or interest in this proposal?
Nothing.
You're not making any...
No, I'm not making any money, no.
You have no prejudice to
No.
have the village
No.
accept your proposal?
No, that's not my proposal. It's my suggestions. I prepared the tax levy ordinances. They go to the county levies the taxes. I don't get a penny out of this, period.
How do you get your money?
Well, I bill them village hourly for time I spend on everything, just like any other lawyer does.
Because, you know, when we invest our money, usually we buy some kind of financial instrument. The person who's selling that idea gets a percentage.
No, I don't get anything from that at all.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
thanks, Joan. Anyone else? Okay.
Good evening, I just wanted to ask a question to him.
You might.
If the state takes over the village, now what will happen? Could you elaborate on that?
They would determine which contracts have priority and need to be fulfilled, and they would determine how much in taxes to levy. And so the state would do the same thing this board here does. They determine the level of services, they determine the tax levy, they would do the exact same thing, except they wouldn't be elected. They'd be appointed.
But you made a statement, I think, that if it's not done, the state could take over.
Sure.
So if they're doing what the state could do, why would the state come in? That's all I'm asking.
You confused me there.
You said that
If, what now?
if the board
Right.
doesn't make it a suggestion to do the tax levy
Right.
and so forth, the state could come in and take over.
Correct.
You said the state can do the same thing that they can do. So
Absolutely can do it. They can do it, and they can double what I just said.
Okay. So if the...
And they can
if the
say,
board-
no more paramedic service for the village of
Okay,
Dalton.
okay.
That's a luxury.
Well, I don't think it's a luxury. I think it's
Well,
a necessity.
There's less than half the state lives without paramedics.
You know,
So,
anyway.
if the state came in, because whether or not we could pay our bills, it would be under receivership at that point. They come in and determine who should be here and who should not be here. In some cases, they say, okay, we'll keep the mayor, the police chief, and the fire chief. Everybody else is expendable. They bring their people in, and they determine how the village is run. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out.
And one of those cities is Flint, Michigan, and we all know what happened with Flint, Michigan when they tried to save money by taking waters from an area that they're suffering to this day.
Okay. My other question was, I don't know if it's a rhetorical question or not, but I was just wondering, we're in such dire need of finance. How do we hire another lawyer and we have one sitting? Why do they do that?
Well, you know, if you want a steak, don't go to a seafood place. If you to a seafood, don't go to a steak place. These our attorneys handle have different expertises, just like doctors, specialty doctors. And then a village attorney say, this is an area that I'm not an expert in, but Mr. Kankar does this for a number of villages.
Okay. It was just a question that kind of boggled my mind. You know, we in such dire need of money, and you go outside and hire lawyers.
Right.
But I understand that, you know, the situation, like you got a headache, you go to a neurologist, not a foot doctor. I do understand that. Okay,
You know, some attorneys handle real estate, things like that. And in some cases, when attorneys come out of school, and you say, well, what kind of law do you practice? I do everything. So, you know.
I don't want him.
You mentioned that there is a percentage of taxes that are not being paid now. What was that percentage again?
It's 20% of the taxes in the village are not paid by December 1 of each year. Okay. Eventually, 15% of the taxes are not paid. So there's more, and it takes another year or so to get another 5% in, is what I'm saying. So it's 15% right away that are not paid.
So don't you think that if we raise our taxes over the course up to 4.9%, that percentage is going to increase, and you're going to get less taxes, and we're deeper in the hole because people cannot afford to pay these increases in taxes?
No,
I mean, have you looked at that scenario and come up with some options of if that happens? Because I'm sure that's going to happen.
I've looked at what's happened in other communities, and you know, it's tough everywhere. I don't know what else to tell you. It's very tough everywhere. I mean, the tax collections in the city of Harvey are 62%. Okay.
Yeah, you're mentioning that, but I still haven't heard the option of what's going to happen. We're still going to be in a hole.
Oh, you're going to be in a hole for 4 or 5 years until this gets straightened out. That is correct.
Okay, and if the community continue to increase foreclosures because people can't afford to pay their taxes, you know, I don't see a solution here. I just don't see it.
I will tell you that the numbers for the loss in your tax collections don't reflect the downtrend, like you say, in downtrend in economic values. It's been steady in the 85 to 86% range after a year for the last 4 or 5 years. So it hasn't changed much.
So it hasn't changed. Right. And you looked at communities similar to Dalton.
No, that's Dalton's numbers.
Those are Dalton's numbers.
Right. That's right.
So you feel that this increase could possibly stabilize us in the next 5 years?
You don't have any choice. I don't know what else to tell you.
No, I'm asking you a question. You say you don't have any choice, but you're predicting.
Oh, my thought is that I don't think the tax loss is going to get any worse. Correct.
Okay. I just don't see where the residents are going to be able to pay this higher tax. They're getting an increase in their water bills. Everything is increasing. And I think in this community, we have a lot of seniors on fixed incomes. So their income doesn't change, but these increases continue to come.
Well, I mean, the good thing about seniors is they're eligible for all types of tax postponements, tax exemptions,
which cause people like myself taxes to go up because I don't qualify for those exemptions.
Oh, I understand that.
You know, so
I understand that.
So I just really don't see a solution here, you know, with increasing the taxes. I don't see how it takes us out of the hole that we're in.
Right.
I think we're going to go into a deeper hole.
Yes, ma'am. You want to come?
Hi, I'm a new resident of Dalton for 3 years, and I'm a senior. My understanding is clouded because I don't see, like, I am on a fixed income, and I don't see how, as the young lady said, increase in taxes is going to decrease the loss in the amount that we have now. If you have foreclosures, I perceive there'll be more foreclosures because seniors on fixed income cannot afford to pay more out for more taxes. So if it goes up higher and higher each year, which you have already said, 4%, then another percent, and another percent, it's continually going up. But our income is not going to change. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, what other options have you viewed other than raising the taxes? I mean, is there any other option, only raise our taxes? Is there some other things that you looked into that might bring some revenue in to prevent us from paying more taxes? Because
well, it's what other source of revenue would you suggest? Let me ask you now.
I can't make the suggestion. You all are the professionals. No. I'm saying, have you viewed it? You're only telling me about taxes. Have you even looked at anything else?
Yes.
Okay, what other things have you viewed that might help us offset raising the taxes 4%? That might not be 4%. Maybe you may raise it 1%. What other avenues?
You raised the water and sewer bills. You have the lowest rate around 20 municipalities in this area. Your rate is so low, it's ridiculous.
And
how are raise that up there?
How are our finances being utilized?
Pardon?
How are our finances? How can we find out how the monies that's coming in being utilized to have us? You already said it was just properties that are vacant. Maybe how many percent? Maybe 90 houses. How many houses are empty that's causing this deficit? What other things are causing deficit in our revenue that's coming in? Because I pay almost $6,000 in taxes. That's a lot of money. And now you're going to take it up to $10,000? How am I going to live?
One of the things that has caused, when I came into office as a trustee in 2011, we received a letter from the city of Chicago that said for the next, was it 4 or 5 years? Mary, for the next 5 years, our water will be increased 25% each year. The current administration at that time, and I had suggested that we raise the water rate because the city of Chicago was charging us for more water. So everybody was worried about getting elected. No, it's going to cause a problem with election. We're not going to raise it. So consequently, we suffered a 125% increase on the water that was not passed off to the residents, and now we're in a predicament like this where we owe the city of Chicago close to $2.8 million in water bills. So those are one of the things. Now, these villages, municipalities, use water as a profit center. Because when you have your water main breaks in the wintertime, you pay overtime, you have to pay for backfill, sand, rocks, a number of things. We've been fortunate enough that we haven't had that many water main breaks in the last couple of years because due to the weather. But when we had the 24 inches of snow and it stayed 20 below, almost 20 below for 20 days, we had I think over 40 water main breaks in 1 year. So it costs us to pay for overtime. We wind up being in the hole. And in this case, I think we're selling our water to our residents for cheaper than what we're buying it from the city of Chicago. Some of these suburbs, our water rate is what, 5.67?
Somewhere around.
Somewhere between 5.67 per unit, and a unit is what?
1,000 gallons.
How many?
$9.67 per 1,000 gallons.
Per 1,000 gallons. There's some suburbs out here charging $16 per unit. In industrial, I think it's in Harvey, the industrial, we were charging our industry rates as the same as the residential rates. And in Harvey, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the industrial rate was $56 per unit. So the water is being sold to residents of these other communities at a rate that would actually make the village a profit and or take care of any maintenance that occurs throughout the water system. And we haven't done that in several years. Any additional comment?
Also,
I mean,
a correction
just so the residents understand, the major sources of revenue for every municipality are: one, sales taxes. That's based upon the businesses in the municipality. Two, you get a distribution from the state from Illinois income taxes. That's not going to change. Nothing you can do to change that. Three, you get some what's called use tax distribution. Again, that's set by the state. You're not going to change that. And property taxes is the biggest source of revenue. So when you're talking about other sources of revenue that you have control over, okay? You have control over how much you sell water, charge for water and sewer bills, and your rates here are so ridiculously low. That's one of the problems you have. You can charge more for vehicle stickers. That's your other source of a large amount, a large source of revenue. You can charge more. You can't. Your transfers tax for real estate is stuck where it is because the state law changed that, so you can't increase that anymore. And that's it. Those are your big sources. Everything else, like business licenses, are pennies. Building permits. I mean, there's not a lot of building going on, so you're not going to receive building permit fees. You just don't have a variety of sources or changes that you can make, and you don't have any changes that the resident isn't going to pay one way or the other.
Attorney Kankar, her concern too, if we can answer that, she says she pays approximately $6,000 a year in real estate taxes. How much of an increase would she actually see approximately?
If some of you have those charts that we passed out, you can take a look. So you can.
She would have an increase of $230.
So it won't go up to $10,000.
$230.
She thought it would go up to $10,000.
Yes.
Just so we put clarity.
It's $230 based upon $6,000 in property tax. It's $230 annually.
Yes.
It equates to 64 cents a day.
Yeah.
And $19 a month.
So that's assuming that all the ordinances are passed. So that's assuming everything, not. It's assuming everything.
So if you look at that scale, the scale that was passed out, if in the first column, if your tax bill was $3,000, village taxes at 2016 is $690. The proposed would increase it to $805, which will be an annual tax increase of $115.
Correct.
A monthly tax increase of $9.59, which will equate to a 3.8% increase. Right. And if you go down the line, assuming that your taxes are in one of these categories from $3,000 to $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, and $7,000, you can go across and see exactly what it would cost you per month, and exactly what it would cost you. I'm sorry, annually, and exactly what it will cost you per month, and which would equate to the last column of 3.83%.
I didn't receive a scale, so I'm interested in $13,000 a year taxes. How much would that increase? If you
13, you just add up 6 and 7 together, so that would be $498.
Yes, Dan. Mike.
I heard vehicle stickers mentioned. What percentage of vehicle stickers are we collecting on? Because I know at one point it was dismal, like there were only a handful of us paying for the whole village.
Right.
So well, what's the deal on that?
And I'm going back to 2011 also. I think it was 2011, 2012, Mary. The vehicle stickers were $20. And at that time, we were selling less than 2,000 stickers a year. We contacted the Secretary of State's office, and we purchased a list of all the registered vehicles in the village. And I think it was around about 16,000 registered vehicles in the village. We were selling less than $2,000 and 2,000 stickers. And I voted against the increase simply because the enforcement of the stickers did not equate to the amount of revenue that we should have received. So consequently, those people that were going to buy stickers are going to buy stickers. And you can raise the price of a sticker to $100. If you're not going to buy one, you're not going to buy one. So my thought process was that it would not increase the revenue. What would increase the revenue is that enforcement would increase the revenue. So at $20, and if we were able to collect 14,000 registered vehicles and stickers, it would equate to over $2 million. So now, in correlation to the chief, we have increased enforcement of sticker enforcement, and there's still a lot of people out there that hasn't done it, but on an annual basis, it allowed us to bring in close to $2 million in additional revenue.
So we're at what, maybe 80% or something like that, according to the numbers?
I'm not sure where we're at. Lena, when she ordered them, we had to order them twice because we ran out of stickers. And with the stepped up enforcement, people are buying stickers.
Yeah, I understand that part, but I think one thing we could do is keep a closer watch on that, and every month update the list so you can know what you still have out there, accounts receivable sort of thing.
Yeah, one thing that I want to try to implement with the board is that in some towns, they buy the list from the Secretary of State of those registered vehicles in their town. If the deadline for buying a sticker would be June or July, everyone that has not bought a sticker on that registered list is automatically sent tickets out. Those tickets go out. It does two things. It brings a person in to buy a sticker, and or it brings a person in to defend why he shouldn't have got that ticket. So in a lot of cases, they not only buy the sticker, but they also pay the fine, which would probably equate to probably $4 million of revenue if we did that. So I'd like to look into some of those villages that do that and try to implement it here.
And it was mentioned about the situations where the state would take over the board and all that sort of thing. As Trustee Muhammad mentioned, Michigan, not just Flint, but there were several cities. I think Detroit had that problem too. Detroit. Yeah, there were several cities in Michigan where the government was taken over by the state. I don't even know if they're still under that or not. Is there a time, because I'm not clear on how long that would be. Would it be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or infinity?
It depends on, and I think East St. Louis was under for 4 years. It depends on how the revenues come in, how the town actually recreates itself. In case of East St. Louis, it got to the point where the town could not pay their bills, and there was garbage sitting out for 6 to 8 weeks, and the state had to come in and do something to try to rectify the situation because it became a health hazard.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Joe.
Are there any incomes due us from the state that we haven't received because of the impasse with the budget?
No, the state is up to date on distributions to municipalities because they put through special legislation last year which provided for what is called a continuing appropriation. So that was true probably 2 or 3 years ago, that payments from the state were delayed. They haven't been delayed for the last 2 years, as opposed to school payments. School payments were not subject to a continuing appropriation, and that's why they didn't get their payments earlier this year in the summer, but they've finally received their payments. So the state does not owe the village any money.
Okay, thank you. And then my other point is, following up on the last gentleman, I'm actually relaying my neighbor's question, which is, why aren't we citing people for blowing through stop signs, illegal parking?
Chief Collins, he's come forward. We get complaints on a regular basis about stop signs and speeding. Chief, why don't you comment on this a little bit? We get calls in our office, the mayor's office, and I've sat down with the chief to implement extra enforcement, and that has been done. And for one example, I think one morning they were on a special detail to issue 41 tickets or something like that in a couple of hours, but they're getting on top of that.
Can you repeat what the question is?
In general, I would suggest any sources of fines or whatever that we could collect, as the gentleman suggested. Let's make an effort to collect the things that are possible.
No, your question was, your neighbor's question was, why aren't we doing more to to get people for speeding and stop sign.
Right, and that would be
Right,
a
stop sign.
revenue, that would be a
Right.
revenue source.
It is. As far as the police department is concerned, we're not revenue driven. We're compliance driven so that we get compliance. And so our goal is not to have to issue citations. But the realization is we have to issue citations, and we've stepped up enforcement in the past couple years to an unbelievable level. We do stop sign details, we do speeding details. We have 2 extra people out there writing parking enforcement. So that all these areas are covered, but they're doing maximum enforcement.
They are doing maximum enforcement.
We've even
Okay.
we've even had some crossing guards. I'm not sure how many.
2. That's our parking enforcement detail.
Right.
They've gone out there, and the number of citations they've issued is incredible. And even with that, it's a drop in the bucket. But like I said, we are not, as far as the police are concerned, we're not revenue driven. We are compliance driven for public safety.
I live in the 155th area of the west side of Dalton. I had to call the police last night because I'm a victim of harassment.
Okay, can we discuss that afterwards?
No, I'm just saying, when the policemen came, they told me that there's a lot of burglaries on the blocks, not on my block, but behind me and the other side of me, okay? If you were enforcing the stop sign, the people ignoring the stop signs and the speeding down the residential streets, you might be catching some of these local people who are also burglarizing.
That is a completely different dynamic. Our burglars are sneak thieves. Most of the burglaries occur during the daytime hours. They'll go through alleys. And when they're walking on the street, you have no idea that that person is a burglary. So even with the stop sign details, the speeding details, it would be almost impossible to identify who the actual burglar is unless we're catching them in the act or someone is calling that there's a burglary in progress.
I'm suggesting that a habitual
Joe.
scofflaw might also be breaking other laws.
Joe, we want to kind of keep this in with the tax stuff. So the
Well,
chief,
I'm trying
the chief,
to suggest sources of revenue.
yeah.
On those stops, if I could just comment, when we stop people, just because they get a ticket doesn't mean that's the end of it. There could be other things going on. They could have warrants, there could be contraband or other illegal things going on in the car. So we do make arrests based off of normal traffic stops, and that happens quite often.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Joe.
If I can just comment briefly.
Go ahead, trustee.
I think the way, or at least the way I look at it, is that our tax level represents what we want our service level to be, because we do have to make sure that we have enough services, and the feedback is great because Chief Collins needs more officers, and we all want to see our streets safer, as well as we need more firemen, we need more public works. So there's a lot of things that we need, and we just recognize that there has to be a delicate balance of what's the right tax level, compare that with what our service levels we expect. So as a representative, we want to know what everybody's feedback is, but we also we have to recognize that not doing a tax increase affects the amount that we are able to provide in terms of service. And of all things, we definitely do not want the state to make those decisions for us, because they have no clue about our town, our neighborhoods, and what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee House. That's exactly what I wanted to hit on a little bit, is the services. Because right now, I think we're operating on a deficit budget, are we not?
Yes.
And having said that, if you had a deficit, then immediately in my mind, something's got to give. I understand that you all have been doing cutbacks and asking people to take days off, and that still obviously isn't coming close to balancing the budget. I think we've had requests from both the police officers and the fire department to hire more people, because it's becoming, I think they use an unsafe situation, okay? And I want to live in a safe town. I certainly don't want to see a tax increase. However, having been here for over 30 years, how could we not have had one? Right. Because we should have had one a long time ago if we just look at the numbers. We should have had one, and maybe if we had it at the proper time, we wouldn't be talking the numbers we're talking now.
That's correct.
But also, you know, I think that for a long time, anytime I got a tax bill, I would get upset at the village because how dare the village raise the taxes. But I think what we forget is that one very important point that was stated here today is that the village is only 28% of your tax bill. You have other taxing agents. A point that was made that kind of went, but we need to start taking that and look at it is if the school district is hiring another person for $100,000. Exactly. Every year the school district has a tax levy. Each school district. And most of them, it's an increase in taxes. I'll talk about District 205 and know a little bit about that. You're paying right now back $30 million that was borrowed last year that no one knows anything about because you don't see it as an increase on your bill, but you didn't see it as a decrease because they just finished paying off one. Okay, so a $50 million debt. Now we're going into a $30 million debt, and that's not going to touch what District 205 really needs. They're probably going to look at another $30 million. But what I'm saying is that we have to take all these things in consideration because if the school districts didn't tax, then maybe we would have more money here in the village to, you know, from your taxes to do things that need to be done. So I don't want to see a tax increase because I want to fix income, and it's going to hurt. But if I got to live here, I want to live in a village that I've been living in for 30-some years that I've come accustomed to. I hate to think about us not getting things done. We've got to, and this is no dig toward anybody. Everybody knows I don't play politics. I'm not for this one. I'm not for that one. I'm for all you all because you all have to work as a team. Our infrastructure is terrible. I mean, these streets have potholes in it, and they're just caving in. And I know that in order to do that, you need money, okay? If I got to live in a village, I want to live in a nice village. So it sounds like the attorney put it, pay me now, pay me later. There's no choice, you know. If this is what we have to do to get it going, okay, and nobody better say anything about this, I'll cut back on a meal, okay? I'll do that to try to get things done, okay? But what we've got to do, and it's imperative that we start doing it not tomorrow, right now, today. All of us have to work together. We talk about accountability. Yeah, I'm going to hold everybody up here accountable, but they have to hold us accountable as well. So with the accountability piece, please, you all, from here on out, don't play politics. If we need a tax increase, don't say, well, I may not get a vote. Tell us the truth. Just tell us where we are. We're you know, I'm a big boy. No comment. Okay? And I can take it. I may not like it, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. And right now, you know, and I heard all the suggestions, but all the suggestions seem to be not enough to really get where we need to be. So I'm just hopeful that now that we see that things, if we don't get involved, can fall apart, you all, us, all of us, have to start holding our school districts accountable as well. Okay? We got to hold them accountable as well because, you know, you weren't asked to vote on that $30 million. They just did it. Okay? And they can do it again and again and again. And what's that $100,000 person doing? How is that transcending to the classroom and a better education for our kids? So, yes, I'm holding you accountable, but I hold the school district accountable too. Why? Because I want you to hold me accountable for me doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm upset and I'm not upset because this tax increase should have been talked about years ago. Thank you.
Mayor, if there are no more comments from the audience, I'd like to read a quote in the record, if I can be recognized, please.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, before we take our vote, residents and board, I just want to quote something that inspires me as an elected official from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He says, courage is an inner resolution to go forward despite obstacles. Cowardice is submissive surrender to circumstances. Courage breeds creativity. Cowardice represses fear and is mastered by it. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when we must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but we must take it because it is right. Dr. Martin Luther King. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Members of the board, now that the floor has been closed, the mayor read Ordinance A. My suggestion is, in light of Vince's comments regarding that this is really a package, I'll read the title of the other ordinances, and then is any objection to an omnibus vote, single vote on the measures?
No objection.
Item B is ordinance number 17-037, an ordinance abating taxes for the $2,930,000 general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2004C, for the 2017-18 tax years in the Village of Dalton. Item C is ordinance number 17-038, an ordinance abating taxes for the $2.275 million general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2004D, for the 2017-18 tax years in the Village of Dalton. Item D is ordinance number 17-039, an ordinance imposing taxes for the $11,535,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2009A, for the 2017-2025 tax years, and authorizing a tax escrow account for the Village of Dalton. Item E is ordinance number 17-040, an ordinance imposing taxes for the $5,455,000 taxable general obligation bonds, Series 2009B, for the 2017-2018 tax years, and authorizing a tax
2028.
Is that 2017-28 tax years, and authorizing a tax escrow account for the Village of Dalton. Finally, ordinance number 17-041, an ordinance imposing taxes for the $12,665,000 taxable general obligation bonds, Series 2009C, for the 2017-2023 tax years, and authorizing a tax escrow account for the Village of Dalton.
Now, after reading that, and just for clarification for the residents, if this tax package is passed, they won't see increases in their tax until the 2017 bill, correct? Which is due in 2018.
They won't receive there won't be any increase until August 1 of 2018.
Yes. So voting on this or passing this today, you will not see an increase for a year and a half.
That's correct.
Right. So this is not an immediate remedy for our problem.
No.
So if there's a motion to approve items A through F inclusive.
I make a motion to include items A through F. Second.
It's been motion. Is there any further? Okay, it's been motioned to accept items A through F, and seconded by it's motioned by Trustee Muhammad and seconded by Trustee Pearson. Any discussion? No discussion. Board roll call.
Trustee Muhammad?
Aye.
Trustee Stubbs?
Aye.
Trustee House?
Aye.
Trustee Denton?
Aye.
Trustee Pearson?
Aye.
Trustee Henyard is absent.
Okay, 5 ayes. Motion carries to package the ordinance A through F. Motion passes. Okay. Now, the other two items was on the agenda, G and H. Was that tabled? Is it going to be tabled, or is it off?
Yes, we discussed it with Chief Dyer, and he suggested that we table them to the next November board meeting.
Okay, and this agenda wasn't modified for today. This is the agenda that was from the canceled meeting. So with the modification, these two items shouldn't have appeared on the agenda, correct?
The original agenda for the special meeting that was supposed to be on October 5th included only the items A through F under the new business. The two firefighter items were added at the request of the chief.
Okay. All right. You have any further?
We need a motion to table those two.
I make a motion to table the two items under new bit, the last two items under new business.
Second.
G and H.
G and H.
Okay, there's been motions to table the two items, item being hiring one firefighter and the other one the purchase of a new fire engine. And seconded.
Second.
Any?
No discussion.
No discussion, okay. Yeah, no discussion on the table.
Trustee Muhammad?
Aye.
Trustee Stubbs?
Aye.
Trustee House?
Aye.
Trustee Denton?
Aye.
Trustee Pearson?
Aye.
Trustee Henyard?
Okay, 5 ayes, motion carries. I asked for a motion to adjourn this meeting, but to also go into executive session. There won't be any further action after we go into executive session, so that would allow, yeah.
Collective bargaining and an individual personnel matter.
Yeah, but that would allow the residents to leave if upon adjournment. Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to go into closed exec session.
Second.
Okay. And what about the adjournment?
We do that after.
Okay. All right, it's been a motion to go into closed session. Roll call.
Trustee Muhammad?
Aye.
Trustee Stubbs?
Aye.
Trustee House?
Aye.
Trustee Denton?
Aye.
Trustee Pearson?
Aye.
5.
Okay, motion carries. Are we recessing or are we going to?
We're going to immediately adjourn, so there's no further action tonight.
Yes, we're going to go into closed session. When we come out of closed session, there will be no further action, and we would immediately adjourn.